Shalom, shalom, shalom. Welcome to our Bible study. We're going to get right into the Word because that's what it's all about, getting into the Word. Let's dig, and dig deep. Amen? Amen. So I just want to go over a few things. If you haven't watched the service from this past Sabbath, I encourage you to go on YouTube and watch it. There was a lot of stuff that was said that we need to kind of grab a hold of. So I encourage you to go check it out. There's a few things that I want to bring up as well because there's a lot of conversations I've been having with people on the subject. And one of them was, it was about the oral law, which was, I was kind of chuckling inside when everybody was talking about the Mishnah, the oral Torah and everything. And I was talking to somebody at work and I was telling them, I said, you know, there's nothing wrong because they call them the fences. The rabbis call them fences. And I said, there's nothing wrong with the fences until they make the fence the law. Then what happens is you violated the fence and they call that the law, and then you're excommunicated in the whole works, and it's not the truth though, because you didn't violate Torah. You didn't violate any of his, you know, any portion of the Torah. You remove the fence, and if you go to Torah and you violate the Torah, then you're in error. If you violate the fence, you're not in error. You're just at the warning point of the fence to stop you from, you know, violating the Torah. So that was one of the things I had talked about with, you know, this individual at work, which is really, I'm hearing it all over the place about the fences, and on Sabbath they talked about the fences as well. So I just wanted to mention that because there was a lot of other things, even with what Pastor Donna had mentioned about covering and all of that. Deep stuff, excellent stuff, and stuff we need to remember as well. There was a lot of things that was said on Sabbath that we need to get a hold of. And like I said, it should be on YouTube now, right? So you get a chance, I encourage everybody out there, go to YouTube and follow the last Sabbath service. It was excellent, excellent. Can't say it was just excellent. You just got to see it. So just remember, fences were meant to prevent you from going to, let's say, the tree of life. So you didn't partake of the fruits you shouldn't be taking of at the time. Not the tree of life, yet the other one was in the scriptures. Yet the tree of life is what we're supposed to be taking part of now. Because he says, I am the life. So let's get into some things. There was a lot of things that he's been showing me, and I got them all down in sections and stuff. It's just like, okay, where do you want me to go? Because it's all one bit. It's like a big volume. It's almost like the Mishnah. You got what, 72 books or something like that. It's so many of them. So I was like, I need to, you know, let's focus on one because it's many parts. And the one that he was talking about, you know, and before I came here, he gave me an example. I want everybody to write down learn. That's a key word, learn. You know, I want to share a story of Samuel. Now, Samuel was a young man, a little boy, and everybody knows the story. He came up, he heard somebody call him. He went out to the priest, and he said, "You called." And he said, "No, I didn't. Go to sleep. Go back to sleep." Again, he comes out. He heard it again. Samuel gets up, goes out there. "You called." And he says, "No, I didn't call." Then he perceived. Now, you got to remember, the word was not around for quite a while. They haven't heard the word for quite a while. And all of a sudden, this young man is hearing. So he perceived something. What did he perceive? He perceived that the living God of Israel was talking to him. So we told him, he says, next time, just say, "Your servant is here." And he did. And what did he tell him? He told him things. Some things he did not share. Some things he did. When God tells you something, when Yoked tells you something, what is it that you need to share and what is it you do not need to share? We need to ask those questions. There's a time and a place for everything he says. You know, like for Pastor Shad, we were talking about this not too long ago about that, where you had some words that he had shared with you that you couldn't talk about for quite a while. And the same with me. And we're talking, how many years was it for you? Many. So, and many, and we're talking decades. And the same with me. And it was until, let me see, was it two Sukkots when we did the Feast of Tabernacles that I had a release to share it. Now that's a long time. That's a long time. Not to, you know, it's like I want to tell somebody, it's like, and it's like, it's not the time. So now I have a freedom to talk about it. And why? Because this is the time. And it's the time for this season. And that's what you were sharing as well. It's the word for this time and this season that we're in. And I was, you sharing that just made me so happy because we have that in common. And I'm sure that there's out in this congregation and even out there that he has spoken to you and had told you there's things you shouldn't say until the time has come. Now, I would suggest that you find out if this is the time, because we're in a time that's very unique. I mean, we're in a fast. Things are changing rapidly, you know, not only in our country and especially in Israel, yet in individuals. And individuals make corporate. You know. So within this body and the body out there, there's changes happening. And we need to find the changes in us so that we can, you know, incorporate them into the body as well as when we go out. So when he was sharing with me about Samuel, he was showing me a few things. One, it was dry. There was no word. There was nothing happening. So basically in today's times, okay, there's no healings, there's no powerful words, there's no messages, no signs, no wonders, no nothing. No teaching of the word, just routine, what they call rote. I do this. And their heart was not in it. So for year after year after year, and then Eli, his sons, what did they do? They didn't revere the things of God, because what did they do? They offered unholy scents in the thing. And it's just like, and what happened to them? They were struck down because there was no reverence. No reverence. Yeah. It was, we always do this, we'll do it this way. Oh, we can do this, we'll change this a little bit. And well, that's not what the Word says. What does the Word say is where we should be focusing. Yet they paid the ultimate price. So that was the thing with that. And then finally, Samuel, he starts hearing. Now, there's nobody around to teach him about the presence, about hearing. He doesn't even know. He just knows that he was dedicated as a young boy to serve in the temple. He had a calling on his life. His mother knew that. His father didn't at first. Yet she knew and went and dedicated. Yet, look at that. That's the thing I want to talk about. There was nobody. Even Eli didn't even pick up on it until after the second time. Then he told him, you hear that again, say, your servant is here. Here I am. You know, even Isaiah, here I am. You go all through the scriptures. Here I am. Okay, I'm here. Speak to me. One of the things was, go right back to that word, learn. And that's what some of the things we're going to talk about tonight, is that learn. He had impressed upon me that you can't shake it if you tried to shake it. It was in song, it was in word, it was in conversations. You can't pass it. And it's, let's go to Matthew 11. Matthew chapter 11. And we're going to go verse 28. 11:28, Matthew. And he says, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden. I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me." That's why we got to really look at the word, because I always took it as, take my yoke upon me and learn of me. And that's what I always used to say, yet it doesn't say that. It says, learn from me. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So what he was showing me is about that yoke. Take my yoke and learn of me. If you read in the scriptures, the way they taught other animals, if they're plowing or just treading the grain, they would always yoke a younger one to the older one who knows how to do it. Why? Well, there's two reasons. One, the younger one is going to learn from the older one, the one who knows, who is already doing it. Two, the other one has help, so the burden is light. Even though this one's learning, it still comes along and helps. So the load is not as heavy. So the whole thing, and it just keeps ringing and ringing and ringing. You know, take my yoke and learn from me. So one of the things is, he was showing me where, real successful people, what do? Where did they start? They had a mentor that they, focused on. And if they were able to go underneath them, yoke with them, and learn from them, and were successful. Now, what he had showed me to is there's two ways of learning that way. You can learn and still not learn. Some things are taught, and some things are caught. Even though you're learning doesn't mean you caught it. Pastor Don, he used to always say that some things are taught and some things are caught. That was a popular phrase he used to say. It's so true, because it is. You can learn. Look at now. Everybody goes to college. Loads of people going to college. If they're coming out, they really didn't learn nothing. And you see them on the thing complaining, I spent all this money in school and I can't get a job to do what I went to school for, and you didn't yoke yourself to the vision that's before you. You're not going to be successful that way. And even in circles of those in religious circles, let's look at that in the Jewish perspective. You have a rabbi. You have a student. What does the student do? They hold on to every word from the rabbi. Good example is Yeshua and his students. What did they do? Master, that's a hard saying. They were listening, yet they wanted to know what it meant, because they wanted to learn. Now you look at them all, and out of all of them, there was one who caught the heartbeat, who yoked himself to him and caught the heartbeat, and that was John. You read in his words. There's no one else who writes that in the beginning, and we were just talking about that, Pastor Ned, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word is God. So every time I read that, Bereshit, the beginning of cycles, Genesis. I don't like the word Genesis yet. That's what everybody knows of that. It's Bereshit, and it's the beginning of cycles. So That's where I go, right to, and that's what he was saying. Every Jew that reads that, that's what they think. I had the opportunity to talk to this gentleman who actually was fortunate enough to go to the, what's the name of this? It's in New York. It's the, what's the Rabbi Sherstein? Yeah. The school that he had out there. He went there for 3 years. Now, that was right after he had passed away. Yet he said he went there and he says, phenomenal. Now, he's Jewish. He says, phenomenal. He says, it's not like any other place. It's totally different. It's a different, yet he went there and he's talking to me, and because his wife goes to a church, because she's a Spanish, so she goes to a Spanish church, and I think it's like, it's a church that observes the Sabbath, so it kind of works out in a way because they both do Sabbaths, and it's a good thing. Yet what he said, he says, even in your book where John talks, he says, in the beginning, and he says that, he says, that's Bereshit. And I'm like, who are you? Who are you? We had an excellent conversation because he sees things that most people don't see. Yet he was curious about me because he asked me. He says, so what do you think about Israel? I said, I'll tell you what I think about Israel. It's the apple of God's eye. I said, you want to be blessed, you bless them. You want to be cursed, curse them. I said, the word's straightforward. He says, so you don't believe that, replacement theology? I'm absolutely not, because it's not in the scriptures. So he's like, it's not. And I'm like, I like this guy. Then I went into the other room, we were talking, and he's got his library. And I'm like, whoa. Whoa. And I'm like, can I just look for a moment? He had books, and then he started telling me how he got the books. I said, you're a blessed man. He got full volumes of like the Mishnah and the Chumash and all of these different writings and stuff like that, the prophets and everything. He got them from the Jewish libraries where he was at, because what happens is people donate them to it for the learning purposes. And he says sometimes people don't return books, so that some are missing, some aren't. Then you get a whole section, and then he says what they do is they keep the newer ones and they get rid of the older ones. And he was there. he says they offered me it all. And it says, I'm on the train, I got a backpack and a box. He says, it was hard. I said, no doubt, my friend, no doubt. He said, I picked out what I could out of it. He says, if I had a car or even a truck or a van, I would have taken it all. Now, this is a library, and it wasn't no small library. He says, I could have got truckloads. And I'm like, whoa, here's my number. When you come up with that opportunity, you let me know. So even he could see that, and he went to that school, and he yoked himself into that, and he learned amazing things. Because when we were talking, I'm like, you don't talk like regular people, that I know. He goes to the one in Leominster, the synagogue in Leominster, and I told him, I said, you impressed me. I'm thoroughly impressed with you. I said, you almost want to make me cry. And yet he was saying the same thing. He says, you're not like ones I've met before. He says, you're different. I said, I am different. I know that. Yet, he could see that. And knowing that he went to that school, and the fruit from just going for 3 years, because he said what happened was he ended up having to leave because he got married and had to go, and then he never went back to finish. He says, yet those 3 years, he says, I still keep in touch with all the people I went to school with over there, and what they're doing and where they're at. It's just like I never left. I'm like, you're right, because you didn't. Because he still talks to all the ones that he says, in the whole thing, when they first started out, everybody was in their groups because there were different ethnic groups. He said it was just him and another person because of they were Spanish. So there wasn't that many Spanish in that section, you know, when he went. So yeah, he says what happened was they had groups, and eventually it got to the point where everybody came and it was one group. Why was it one group? Because they all were yoked to the same, the rabbi, because he said the rabbi's name who was there at the time, they all lined up with him. It's like, we're here, you're the teacher, we're here to learn, and we're going to pay the price. He said he enjoyed sitting there, studying. He says that was the best thing, to sit there all day long and just study the Word. Torah, the writings, you know, the prophets, and he says, it was the best time of my life. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, yes. Yeah, he didn't just leave that there, he took it with him. Now he's doing it for others. Yet he still studies, he likes studying. He didn't put it down, he still studies. You know, the Word of God says, study, show yourself approved. So it's like, he studies. So that was a very precious thing for me, because I had a point in time to meet with somebody who was totally, and he's Jewish, you know, and he thinks that everybody who believes Yeshua is Messiah believes that, you know, Jews were replaced. And I'm like, no. This is the thing I said, we are grafted in to you. And he smiled. He says, you understand that? I'm like, yes. So there are people out there that understand what you know, Abba is doing. And he was one of them. And it was very refreshing with me. Very refreshing. So take my yoke and learn from me. You look through the scriptures. It was always somebody that was mentoring somebody. You know, you always had your bad, you had your good, yet you either mentored in good or you mentored in bad. Yet if you mentored in the Torah, you always mentored good, because good always would happen from it. You know, one of the things is, because he showed me different ways, you know, to yoke yourself. Because a lot of people don't realize what that means. You know, it's like, well, I read the Bible, you know, I study, you know, it's like, well, I spent my 10 minutes this morning, you know, reading scriptures. I hear it all the time. You know, I really get in the Word. 10 minutes, and I said, that's good. And it doesn't matter if you were in there 10 minutes or 10 hours. What did you get? What spoke to you when you yoked yourself to get that time frame? What spoke to you? What made a difference in your life in that time frame? What did you learn from him? You know, I tell you, I hear it all the time. Anybody who professes to be, you know, a believer that knows what the Word says, la da 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 da. I read da 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 da, and tells me, you know, they'll all say it. This many chapters, this many chapters, this many chapters, and I'm like, that's great. And if you are, that's beautiful. So, again, what is he saying? What are you learning? If you're being yoked at that time, you're going along with him. He's showing you something, or you're just doing rote. Like if you're with the cattle, you got the one cow going around and you got the younger one going around. Now the younger one has an option to learn, or just do it by rote. You know, unfortunate, a lot of people are doing things by rote. Now, there's nothing wrong with rote in itself. Yet if you're spending that time in there, it's not for rote. It's for learning purposes only. What do you go to school for? To learn. Yet, these days, you better watch what school you're going to, because you're not going to learn what you need to learn. Yet, yoking yourself to the Word, the living Word, and learn from Him is what's going to make the difference. Now, he started showing me about, way back when I started, he started sharing these end time things with me. He would bring me through the scriptures, and I would follow him along, learning his pattern and understanding the way he speaks to me, because he may speak a little different to, everybody else. And I'm sure he doesn't say to Pastor Shad, "Yo, Tim." I'm sure that he doesn't say that to you as well. I'm sure that he has his own special way to get your attention. If you're yoking with him, you're right up with him, you have that opportunity to listen, learn, observe, and then walk it out. Many people, and I say many people because there's lots of people I meet out there, and the same thing. They have books, yet what they lack is, they lack knowledge and wisdom. And all you're getting, get wisdom. Well, where do you get wisdom from? From Him. He is wisdom. You hang out with Him, He's going to give you wisdom. You're going through things, that's right, go through them with Him. Being yoked to Him, go through with Him. Most people go through it on their own, instead of yoking up to Him and going through it, and He'll show you, He's a light to your path. It says so in Psalms. He's your rear guard. He's your sun and shield. These are the times that we need that. He's been speaking to me. He says, "Son, what would you do if the grid goes down?" I said, "Well, I'd be without electricity, wouldn't I? Unless you provide it. Or if I had a generator, that would be..." Yet then, what he said, because I said that, I said, "I could get a generator." He says, "Well, the grid is down. They can't pump gas." Ooh, that's good. I said, "Well, I had gas. Well, it only lasts for so long, you need more." I mean, you're correct. Then what do you do? I said, "I would have to rely on you, wouldn't I?" He says, "Absolutely. You should be doing that anyways." See, we get into a place where we depend on things. And the other thing he says, because he's talking about things going on. All right, the grid goes out. What are you going to do? No, you don't do that. That's not going to get you nowhere. You're gonna, okay, what do I need to do? Yet, you should have been in a place where he would have prepared you for it going down. The other thing is, like, what happens when the internet goes down? That's a big one. It's a big because the majority of people rely so much on the internet that if it went down right now, people would be like, "Oh." See, I have my Bible online, yet I have it in my computer. Yet I have paper form and more than one version of it. I have my books, my Hamash and my Psalms and Proverbs and all those. I have them all in written form. If the internet went down tonight, I would still be good because I still have the Word. Not only would I have here, I could continually get it going by reading it. By reading it, it'd be there. So we get to the point where where the internet goes out. These are just illustrations only, because he's just bringing it up saying, "Well, what would you do? Well, what would you do?" I was like, well, these are, and then they're valid things, They'll say, "Okay, you don't have this. What do you do? You don't have that. What do you do? What do you do?" It's like, it's a good question. What do you do? It's like, I got to rely on you. I need to be spending that time, and I need to yoke myself to you so that you will lead me and prepare me for these events that come in the end times. Because we're coming to a point. Now know that in the land of Goshen, outside there was many things happening, yet it wasn't, the majority of it wasn't happening in there. You know? No, the other way he was showing me, he says, by yoking with him is Sabbath. He says that's a vital one. He says, because that shows the world the covenant you have with me. So that's a distinct sign for others to see, that they will know. Yet it's beneficial to us as well. Yet that's a powerful tool. And it's like, why won't you work on Saturday? Because I honor the Sabbath. What's that? I say it's a day, the seventh day. It's the day that God rested, and He commanded us to rest on. That's good enough for me. I was like, you can try to force me. I'm not going to work. Yeah, and then people, and this is where people go wrong, is they'll say, well, I can work on Sabbath because. No. Are there, situations where you can? Absolutely. In time of war, like Israel, you have religious Jews that are fighting. Yet they're fighting for a reason. And even in the midst of that, they're finding favor where they can do Shabbat too. So, you know what I mean? It's your heart action towards it. It's like, well, the sun went down, it's Shabbat, so I have to do this. Well, Shabbat, I shouldn't do that. Those are wrong attitudes, because for one, if you really were into Shabbat, those were things you want to push away anyways, so that you can enjoy Shabbat. Yeah? The biggest thing is I hear people, the football game. I'm like, and the TV don't work, what you gonna do? It's like, why make him second when he should be first? The scripture says, and it's in Revelations, return to your first love. Who is your first love? What was that time in your life, that the difference where you were doing this direction and you turned and went that direction, and your life changed? You were so happy about it, and that you just told everybody about it. You were just like a little child, because you were so excited and thrilled about that time in your life. Where is that now? Just saying. I have opportunities to share at work, and I do, and I'm seeing wonderful things happening. I'm seeing one gentleman who's observing Sabbath right now. He's actually going to a synagogue. He's visited with these people that have been talking to him that are Jewish, that he just like skate around and just until I started talking with him, and then things started changing. And then now he's like, every Friday after work, I touch base with him and say, look, Shabbat Shalom, until we meet again on Monday. And he says the same thing. If I don't get him, he gets me. That's a big difference from what he was doing before. Yet, that's great for him. I don't put a notch in my belt because it has nothing to do with that. That's great that somebody else is on a journey like we are, coming closer, to yoke himself to him, to learn from him, because he's learning from him. And it's amazing how fast he's learning. I had another individual who worked at another company who I talked to, and they asked me if there was any positions open at work, and I said, yeah, apply for this one. And I said, while you apply for that one, don't settle for that one. Ask about the other one, it pays more. And then today, this was their first day. They're starting at the better pay one. And you want to know why? Because I talked to the individual about going back to their first love. That changed things. So now her and her husband are going back to their first love. And they're observing Sabbath. It's a big deal. To me, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Now, they're at a point they're saying, because they want to learn. And I said, because they were they learn that, to learn to talk differently. They said, thank you for doing that for me. I said, I didn't do anything. I said, I didn't say anything to anybody. I didn't go around. I says, this was because you were in the right place, at the right time, with the right people, serving the right God. And she just said, you're right. So then she starts asking me, give me some books that I can read and learn. I really want to learn. So I gave them a list of some books, which versions of the Bible that, so that they understand. And then, on this note here, I gotta write this down, because I told her, I says, you want to read anything that has it in the Jewish perspective so they have a better view about it and explains it from the Jewish root of it. That's a better thing for you than learn it from the other end and to have to relearn it again. I says, we were grafted in, so that's where you need to learn from, and that's where you need to start. So I gave her some Bibles to look at, so she's going to look and buy them, and then some other books to look at. So when I said, then what you need to do is start studying about the festivals. That's what I just wrote down, and I'm going to go right back to that. I says, you need to learn about the festivals, because the festivals, because it goes right with this, is another way of yoking yourself to Him, to learn from Him. Every festival reveals Himself in it. So if it reveals Him in Himself in every festival, I would imagine that He would have some things to teach us. And we've seen things throughout the years that He has taught us. The one that sticks out the most was the time that we were in the sukkah, and people were swinging around the pole there, and that was a supernatural thing. Why did that happen? And what was and this is the key thing, what was the saying for that time frame? We are so happy. It was about the joy. And what happened? We learned about that. And that was the whole thing. That's why that happened inside there. Everybody's face and everybody's attitude was totally filled with joy. They were happy. It was a miraculous thing. Never mind that the people were going around and straight around the pole. And for that, I didn't ask people what it was like until people started talking about it and sharing things about it. Then I started realizing some other things. That when I was going around the pole, I just thought I was just going, hanging and just swinging around there. That's not what everybody says. Yet I know one thing, that changed a lot of things in my life. I had a joy that I've never had before, to that degree, if you know what I'm saying. And I've seen it in everybody. I even seen it in Papa. Now, Papa was going around there, and that changed him. The children, everybody, that changed him. Why? Because at that point in time, they grabbed it and yoked themselves with Him, and they learned. Everybody was learning from Him. Every time we go to one of these festivals, we got one coming up pretty soon too. It's like, yoke ourselves to that so we can learn. Let's learn from Him. Because we need to learn from Him, because we have so much to learn, especially in these times. And that was one of the things too, is when He was showing me every festival is an opportunity for us to do that, to yoke ourselves to learn from Him, because now we've seen what happened and we didn't understand a lot of things. Now we have an understanding, because we're going to yoke ourselves to Him. We're going to follow Him as He takes us through the festivals. And we will learn from Him. Before, we were learning of Him. Now we're learning from Him, which is going to make a significant difference, especially when we read the Word. Instead of learning of Him, we can learn from Him. It's a difference. It's a total different scenario, and it produces a different outcome. They're both good outcomes. The one that's going to produce most is if you learn from him, because you're learning directly from him, so to say. And if you find somebody who's successful and you want to be like that person, you're not going to follow somebody who grabbed a book and read it and they've not applied it, right? You want to follow somebody who took that book and applied it and made a difference in their life. You know, one person that I use for an example a lot, if you're going to use somebody as a person, as a reference, and I use that as Ben Carson. Ben Carson is a good example. Ben Carson grew up in, you know, Chicago, in the gang-infested drug and everything like that, you know, shootings and everything. Yet, world-renowned neurosurgeon. Now, and he absolutely loves Abba, loves him, just loves him. Now, what happened? His mother loved and showed him. He learned from her, which was transmitted to him. And then what was the difference? World-renowned neurosurgeon. You don't just think that would come from, you know, I grew up in the projects, so I can call the projects. I said, that's not politically correct. It's politically correct if I came from there. Yet he came from the projects. And he came from the projects, yet he left the projects and didn't have the projects come with him. Like the Israelites left Egypt, yet they took Egypt with them. See, going through the desert, they had the opportunity to yoke themselves, and they didn't. That's why they kept going. Moses. Now, Moshe was a different story. He yoked himself. And what happened? Mighty things happened. When he didn't, he got off the yoke and got into himself. And when he struck the rock, he wasn't yoked. And he paid that price. Yet, what did the people say when they saw him yoke himself to Abba? You go up there. You come back and you... So they wanted to learn from him through him. So they want to learn of him. They didn't want to learn from him. There's a difference. And that's why they did what they did. All the good kings, bad kings, same thing. Now David, and he was an exception because of one thing. He was a man after Abba's heart. Why? Because when he missed the mark, when he unyoked himself, he owned it. He didn't blame nobody else. He didn't do like Adam. It's the woman you gave me. Didn't do that. No, he says, judgment came upon the land. He says, these innocent sheep don't deserve it. This is my fault. I deserve it. And it came on his house. And he spared the plague from going throughout the whole camp. Yet that's why once he knew he made error, he made it right. So when he was supposed to be in battle and he was not yoked, he unyoked himself and put himself in a bad spot. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong people, serving, and then had the ultimate price. Yet, he turned around. And that was the key thing with him. He turned it around, went the other direction. You know, take not your spirit from me. He knew. He said, I can't do it. Without you being yoked to me, I can't do it. You read his Psalms, and that's what it's saying. You know, he enjoys the Word. The Word brings life to him. His Torah, your Torah brings life. How does a man keep himself pure? By meditating and meditating on Torah. So basically with his heart, he knows and understands is, I'm going to yoke myself and I'm going to stay there and I'm going to learn from him. And that was the difference in his life. He chose to learn from him. You know, Solomon was the same in the beginning. And then, boom. Anytime you missed the mark, it's because you unyoked yourself. You rather learn about him instead of from him. You know, what you're doing is pulling yourself away. We don't need to do that. What we need to do is yoke ourselves. And if you see what a yoke does, because people think a yoke, you know, it's like, no. A yoke is the two become one. You got to think it like that. The two become one. This one's taking part of the burden, the younger one. The older one's teaching the younger one how to do it. You know, that's no different than what Yeshua did with the disciples. The teacher did with the students. No different than what we do when people come and come to the saving knowledge and give their lives. Same thing. We can show them how to get yoked to him and learn from him instead of learning about him. You know what I mean? It's like learning from him is a direct instead of you go and tell us about it. You go and tell us about it. No, it's like I'm going. It's like in Isaiah, was it Isaiah, where he says, Isaiah 6, where he says, all of these things happen, and he said, whom shall I send? Send me. Here I am. I'm willing to yoke with you and learn from you. That's all it is. It's a simple thing. It really is. Yet if we don't yoke ourselves to him, how are we learning? You know what I'm saying? How are we learning? By other people's experiences, which is okay. Yet wouldn't you rather learn from the one who knows all? I want to know about quantum physics. Am I going to go talk to a dairy farmer? Maybe if he's into quantum physics. Yeah, you understand what I'm saying? A farmer I can learn from the farmer about farming. Yet a scientist who knows quantum physics, I can learn from him quantum physics. I can read books, get understanding. Yet if I'm with the individual who is into quantum physics and understands it fully, I can learn from them. You understand? It's the difference. So especially in these times when all these things are going to be coming down the pike, and we're not going to sit here and focus on all of that. We're going to focus on our relationship with him, to yoking with him to the point that as we're walking through things, that we will know what to do. We'll absolutely know what to do, how to approach it, when to approach it, everything. We'll know any aspect of it that we need to know. Amen? Amen. So I encourage you, yoke yourself to him and learn from him. Amen? Well, shalom, shalom. I'm sure that you got something from this. See you on Sabbath, and enjoy your week until then.